U.S. prosecutors accused John Ashe, former president of the UN General Assembly, of taking more than $1 million in bribes from Chinese businessmen to support their interests through UN-sponsored projects.
Today's charges will confirm that the cancer of corruption that plagues too many local and state governments infects the United Nations as well. As alleged, for Rolex watches, bespoke suits, and a private basketball court, John Ashe, the 68th President of the UN General Assembly, sold himself and the global institution he led.
President of the United Nations General Assembly of its 68th session, John William Ashe, died mysteriously at his home at the age of 61. Originally ruled a heart attack, later to be revealed that his larynx had been crushed by a barbell. The mysterious cause of death and the people who are connected to the death of Mr. Ashe are still operating in governments around the world. Some of these people have alleged body counts well over 100 people. And today, we are going to start the look into the story and ultimately the last days of his life and his connections with the Clintons, China, and the United Nations. I'm Anthony. Thank you for being here on the Black Raven Report. This is the Clinton Blacklist. In 1989, Mr. Ashe graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a PhD in bioengineering. After graduating from the University of Pennsylvania, Mr. Ashe would go on to work for the United Nations as a scientific and minister counselor for his country. Later, he would serve as the chairman of the 13th session of the Commission for Sustainable Development, before later becoming the president of the 68th United Nations General Assembly. To eventually get to the connections of the Clinton Blacklist, we have to go back, way back, to the 1990s, when a younger, Bill and Hillary Clinton and their friend, a Chinese national and a member of the Chinese Communist Party, David NG Lapsang, I'm going to call him NG, it's easier, and I think it sounds cooler, a Macau-based Chinese billionaire, real estate businessman, triad gang leader, and a kingpin. In the early 1990s up to the 1996 election for the Clinton and Gore campaign, NG used a proxy man through a restaurant in Arkansas to funnel millions of dollars into the Democratic National Committee, helping the Clinton and the Gore campaign get elected. Later, upon investigation, investigators found out with the White House visit log that he had been favored with at least 10 visits to the White House, an Arkansas restaurant owner who was charged for funneling money to the DNC. In 1998, a Senate report identified NG as the source of hundreds of thousands of dollars illegally funneled through an Arkansas restaurant owner named Charlie Tree, a Chinese-American citizen who had been friends with the Clintons since the 1970s, where Clinton would be governor and later use election money to run for president. When the fundraising efforts started to raise headlines after the 1996 election, Tree disappeared to China and was thought to be hiding there, thwarting congressional committees who wanted to haul him up to Capitol Hill to testify. Tree also had been linked to schemes by which money was distributed to people legally able to contribute, like random citizens, who then allegedly donated it to the Democrats in their names to conceal the actual source of the funds, which would be Charlie Tree, who was then given the money by NG Lapsang, straight from China, the Chinese Communist Party, who also had ties to Henry Zhao, who is a business partner with Hunter Biden. Tree was indicted taking money from NG for the purpose of contributing Chinese foreign money through his restaurant in Arkansas to fund the DNC and the Clinton cabal. After Tree was indicted, he disappeared back to China. At the time had not been arrested. But after congressional investigations turned to Tree in the late 1996, he left the country for China. Tree returned to the U.S. in 1998 and was convicted and sentenced to 3 years probation and 4 months of home detention for violating federal campaign finance laws by making political contributions in someone else's name and making false statements to the Federal Election Commission. According to the Justice Department records, NG Sang's business associate 1 listed in the documents very well may have been Charlie Tree. His connection to Bill Clinton and the connection to Chinese foreign money running into American elections. NG, being a very wealthy Chinese businessman, had many proxy paths to power and influence when it comes to procuring certain human resources in government. One of these proxy men had been a very powerful man from Antigua, an intelligent man and a man with an important seat at the UN. This man being Mr. Ashe. Now, Mr. Ashe, having been in the United Nations since 1995 in a less major capacity, this would have been around the first time that he would have met the president at the time, Bill Clinton, who took office in 1993 to 2001. During this time, introductions would have been made on a world stage. And the Chinese connections that Clinton had already used to get elected are already partners in the United Nations at this time. This would be the first time that NG and Ashe would be presumed to have made the connection, but no one knows when exactly that connection was made that I know of yet. As NG and Ashe's relationship would grow over time, so would Ashe's standing in the United Nations as well as his wealth. Over the time of their relationship at the UN, NG gave Ashe $500,000 in bribes for NG to obtain lucrative investments in Antigua, as well as a multi-billion-dollar UN-sponsored conference center in Macau, China, for a global business incubator. I mean, can you imagine spending the world's donated money for peace on personal contracts for global business bribes and positions in government? Yeah, that's pretty common, actually. Over the years leading up to Mr. Ashe's arrest on October 6, 2015, he had accrued a lifetime of wealth, gifts, and favors from the Chinese and American government officials. Ashe was given a further $800,000 from various other Chinese businessmen seeking influence at the United Nations and Antigua. The other businessmen are known as Shi Wei Yan and Heidi Hongpao. I totally butchered those names. NG also gave Mr. Ashe extravagant vacations and a $2,500 a month climate change consultant. What a waste of money. These people deserve to be locked up, man. What a waste of money. Could you imagine spending $2,500 a month on someone to tell you that the sun's causing climate change? Mind-blowing. With millions of dollars of bribe money that Mr. Ashe had stashed away, he had always lived a lavish lifestyle to fit his corrupt lifestyle. Ashe spent $59,000 on custom suits. Hold on, let me get this real quick. Ashe spent $59,000 on custom suits, $54,000 on Rolex watches, and a $30,000 basketball court, a BMW X5, and luxury vacation clubs costing $69,000 annually. To pay for this, all it cost him was his integrity and the UN's integrity and eventually his life. While it may have seemed that Mr. Ashe was living the perfect life, filled with money, wealth, power, and all the things that you could ever want, it eventually came to be. Mr. Ashe's fatal flaw seemed to be when he waived his diplomatic immunity when he became a legal, permanent resident of the United States. The UN tried to defend Mr. Ashe by saying that UN officials cannot be prosecuted by the United States government. But the IRS had different things in mind. Since they couldn't charge them for taking bribes and influencing elections, there was one thing they could get him for, and that was tax evasion. Because, and I quote from Manny Muriel, Assistant Special Agent for the IRS, illegal income, including bribes, is taxable. Now, while I do enjoy the resolution to this problem, I do find it interesting that you can defraud and cheat the government and its people, but no one escapes the IRS. NG enjoyed no immunity and was facing bribery charges on top of the original ones for allegedly lying about the cash. NG's lawyer continued to insist on his client's innocence, and NG continued to be held without bail. On October 6, 2015, John Ashe was arrested and charged along with 5 others in a criminal complaint filed by federal prosecutors, being charged with funneling millions of dollars in bribes from Chinese government sources to facilitate business dealings, and these business dealings being in real estate, business investment, and government contracts. Mr. Ashe would be standing trial on tax evasion on the money that was illegal income from China and taking bribes. The stand he would have to take would directly tie his dealings with NG. And NG would harken back to Charlie Tree, who, if you remembered, was the Arkansas restaurant owner who was charged for funneling Chinese government money into American elections to get Bill Clinton into office, as well to make Bill Clinton governor. while Mr. Ashe was awaiting trial, which was 5 days away, in which he would have to testify where the money came from and why he didn't claim it on his taxes. And so Mr. Ashe decided to get a workout in to relieve the stress of testifying about who gave him the money, why he was given it, where it was going, what was it used for. He would have to testify about the last 20 years of money funneling, corruption, and election fraud, all because of his taxes. And this is the most amazing point, because the IRS, who I absolutely do not like, is the only reason that this case got broken. So I guess while people are doing evil things, there's still good that can come from it. So understandably, Mr. Ashe wanted to relieve his stress from having to testify, so he did what anybody would do. He went to go get a workout in, which would be his last workout. As the next time anyone saw Mr. Ashe, it would be the paramedics when they arrived at his home to find him lying under a barbell, unconscious and unresponsive. The UN would report that Mr. Ashe had died of a heart attack and that no foul play was to be expected. That is, of course, until the medical examiner's report came out and found out that Mr. Ashe had suffered traumatic asphyxiation and a crushed larynx to be the cause of death. While it might seem like a coincidence that this man in his 60s lifting heavy weights and dropping them on his own neck does seem weird. In extremely rare cases, this could happen, but with the lying on the reports, the amount of money being handled, and the cost of being exposed, that this was more likely to silence the Chinese to UN to American connection that has been influencing our country for more than 40 years now. Another man charged in this currency conspiracy was one Francis Lorenzo. In March, Lorenzo pleaded guilty to bribery, conspiracy to commit bribery, money laundering, tax fraud, and illegal bank accounts. In court, Lorenzo agreed with the government charges that he had helped channel bribes from Chinese businessmen to Ashe, who would then allegedly seek to use his offices to help set up a United Nations Conference Center in Macau. Chinese businessman Ng Lap Sang, a Macau business developer, pleaded not guilty. But 3 of the other original defendants have now changed their pleas to guilty. Lorenzo was facing 63 years in prison, but after his testimony against Ng, he was given 250 hours, about 1.5 weeks, of community service and had to pay $243,000 in restitution. After a lengthy trial, Ng was sentenced in 2017 to 4 years in prison for his conviction on bribery, conspiracy, and money laundering charges. In 2020, Ng was released during the coronavirus pandemic, having to serve 34 months, about 3 years of his sentence. And the Clintons have yet to face charges for any of their connections to these crimes, as it is difficult to have concrete evidence that hasn't been destroyed. Another very rich businessman that is an important member of the Chinese Communist Party, with the same goals and business dealings as Ng, was Henry Zhao, who you might remember I mentioned earlier with the business deals with Hunter Biden. Now, Henry Zhao, president of the Harvest Capital Management, that has been dealing business with Hunter Biden since before 2015 and funneling money to the DNC through Hunter Biden's kickback business deals with the Chinese communist Henry Zhao. The connections that will continue to be made as we venture down this rabbit hole of corruption will surely lead to very interesting ends, and I personally cannot wait to dive any deeper. And if you want to dive in with me as we go down this dark, disturbing, and downright fun exploration of these disturbing people's lives, then hit the subscribe button and give this video a like so I know you like this topic and it interests you. If you have any information or other mysterious death connections to the Clintons, or just want to say hi, leave a comment below. I'll respond. I can't wait to hear from you. Once again, thank you for watching the Black Raven Report. Be safe out there.